88.3 WSBU. It's your favorite hour of the week. It's Seipp. It's Smitty. It's Seipp and Smitty on WSBU 88.3 The Buzz. And Tom, so glad to be back. I know it's a week away from the show is just too long. I know we said we were thinking of maybe getting 2 time slots per week, but we got this right now, and I'm glad to be back.
Oh yeah, me too. And listen, two might be too much at this point. We're lucky to get our one in, sneak it in somehow. So this is my favorite hour of the week.
Absolutely, and like Tom just said, we got a lot on our plate. Dealing with a lot of campus media shenanigans day in and day out here at St. Bonaventure. We're busy guys, but we'll always make time for Seipp and Smitty. Tom, you just put the graphic up on the board. We do have the Buzz actual interest meeting tonight, 7 p.m. on Zoom. So for those who are listening that go to St. Bonaventure and would like to join the radio station, the number 4 college radio station in the country, well, we have a link for you. And this Buzz interest meeting, you'll get a lot of information on what we do here and what you can do, and it's so much.
Yeah, check out, again, if you go to St. Bonaventure, check out today's notice board. It will be on there, and you can fill out this form, and that'll get directly to me, and I'll shoot you a little email after this meeting, and it's such an exciting night.
Yep, absolutely. We can't wait to see more faces here at the Buzz. It's one of our favorite times that we see like new people kind of getting acclimated and being excited to do the same things we do week in and week out, and hopefully be able to do the same things that we do on these live streams week in and week out. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and now YouTube Live. So this is really exciting time for the Buzz. We're making a lot of new changes, new improvements to the station, and we couldn't be happier to get the ball rolling. So let's actually get the ball rolling here. And Tom wanted to start this week with the greatest, conglomerate of sports in the country, and that's New York.
Oh, of course. I mean, listen, what we're going to start off with is something that, you said, oh, we want to talk Super Bowl. That's 5 days after. I don't even want to talk Super Bowl, but let's talk actually what happened 5 days ago. The biggest news story from Sunday, that's New York Knicks reacquiring Derrick Rose.
Oh, my gosh.
I know. When this happened, it was in the works for a while. I was talking to my dad for a little bit of it, and it's such an interesting deal because the Knicks, obviously, it's kind of funny. New York is a city star, right? They have Kevin Durant, they have Kyrie Irving, and James Harden all in the city of New York playing basketball. But the biggest star in New York so far this basketball season has been Emmanuel Quickley.
Oh my God.
I mean, this guy has been fantastic so far this season. Thibodeau, it depends on the game. Sometimes he's playing 13 minutes, sometimes he's playing 30. And it's really been interesting to see how his playing time works in because Elfrid Payton is still the starting point guard. That's why it's so incredibly interesting to see the Knicks go out and trade for a guy like Derrick Rose and keeping Elfrid Payton on this roster alongside Emmanuel Quickley. Thankfully, I mean, Dennis Smith Jr., he was brutal ever since that Porzingis trade happened. But this is a really interesting deal. We all know the love affair between D Rose and Thibs, and obviously everyone in New York is in love with Emmanuel Quickley so far, and everyone hates Elfrid Payton, but he remains in the starting lineup. So yeah. It's definitely interesting to see what the heck is going to happen with these 3 point guards, it seems like. And it seems like I feel bad for my boy Austin Rivers.
I was going to say, let's not forget about the guy who was dropping straight buckets at the beginning of the season, Austin Rivers.
The Utah's Jazz killer. I feel so bad for Austin Rivers because I do like him, and he played great at the beginning of the season. But him and Frank Ntilikina have just fallen off completely. They're not even playing at all. Ntilikina is in health and safety protocols, but Rivers, he's just non-existent. He had a DNP on Sunday and Tuesday.
It's funny that the Knicks come into the same dilemma, I guess, every couple of years. 2 years ago, and you mentioned Tibbs getting the band back together. I'll mention Taj Gibson here as part of that former Chicago band that they had with the Bulls. Mm-hmm. But the Knicks come into this problem of collecting too many players at one position. It seems like every couple of years now. When I said Taj Gibson, they had so many power forwards at that time. They signed Noah Vonleh,
Bobby Portis,
and then Julius Randle was also a part of that group. So that's 4 guys that they had in the same offseason at the power forward position. We're seeing that now with, if you count Frank Ntilikina, 5 guys who can handle the ball for the majority of your possessions. And they're 5 guys who I think can all play on NBA rotations. So the Knicks need to actually have some intelligence here. Now, I say that intelligence, they had it when they took Emmanuel Quickley. in this draft. That's obviously been one of the steals that people have been talking about so far with this year's draft. But they need to have some intelligence in the trade front with roster moves mid-season. They got to get rid of, they don't have to get rid of, but they have to find a new home for one of Elfrid Payton, Austin Rivers, or Frank Ntilikina. Now, Frank Ntilikina is somebody that the Knicks are just absolutely attached to. Knicks fans have quickly become attached to Frank Ntilikina after the first couple of years of his career were absolute garbage, and now they just love the guy. So they need to find a new spot for one of those or two of those three guys so they can find other and fill other holes in their rotation, which it looks like right now that the wing is the need.
But here's the thing. You mentioned trading Austin Rivers, right? And that's come up in NBA talks recently. But we talk about this culture change one night. We got Derrick Rose for Dennis Smith Jr., who wasn't playing at all. He's going to play in the G League starting today.
Good luck to him.
And a second-round pick. I would be perfectly fine if at this very second we got a tweet saying, Elfrid Payton was shipped off to Orlando or Milwaukee for a second-round pick. That's fine. I don't even want anything. I just want him off the roster because at the same time, listen, the Knicks are 11-15, right? They're technically in a play-in tournament spot right now, so technically a playoff spot, playing for our playoff lives. But I'm more invested in the development, right? You mentioned Austin Rivers, and I don't really understand why the Knicks would trade Austin Rivers because they do have him for 2 additional years after this. Mm-hmm. Frank Ntilikina, listen, I might be the biggest Frankie Smokes fan in the state of New York. But again, it's all about development. That's why I was a little curious about why Derrick Rose was getting traded to the Knicks, but the only guy really that I'm just like, okay, this guy just cannot be on the roster is Elfrid Payton. He's had his moments. He's had his games so far. I think it was Sunday. I think he had 18 against Miami. He had 18. He's played well at times, but I'm more invested in let's build this year into next year, into next full year. Okay. And that includes playing Emmanuel quickly, seeing what you could get out of Frank Ntilikina. And you're going to have Austin Rivers under contract for 2 more years, and he is a good player. So, let's keep him involved and invested and keep him for the long term. I would not like to trade Austin Rivers.
Okay, so you talk about not wanting to trade Austin Rivers, and I don't really think you should either. His value actually isn't too bad around the league. In my opinion, I think you could get a decent return on him. However, he's a really viable bench scoring option. That's what the Knicks are going to need. The defense that's been being played in New York, that's obviously a Tom Thibodeau kind of mantra of defensive mindedness. They've been playing good defense. They need better offense, and Austin Rivers off the bench is a viable scoring option for them. Sure. So the only option I can see here is Payton being taken off the roster, because Frank Ntilikina, while I call him a point guard or a ball handler, he can guard 1, 2, 3, sometimes even some 4s. So he's a very big Swiss Army knife in that roster. So they'll be able to use him in so many different ways where you really can't use Elfrid Payton other than bringing the ball up the court.
Yeah, and again, I'm not even too much concerned about the return in a potential deal, no matter who it is. That's why I understand if you trade Austin Rivers, you are getting a little bit more. He does have he's very well respected, and he's a guy who can get you points off the bench. But it might be idiotic for me to proclaim this, but I'm just not. There's just something about me that I'm not concerned about the return. I just want to continue developing Emmanuel quickly, and keeping Austin Rivers involved. Obviously, he doesn't need a development. He's been around the league for a very long time. But just keeping him around. Frank Ntilikina, let's see what we can get, because he's only improved each of his last 3 years. Mm-hmm. So, I just want to see – I want to see the young kids play. And the young kids except Obi Toppin, because he's horrendous. But I would like to see Emmanuel quickly get the majority of the run. And if he's playing alongside Derrick Rose, which is exactly what happened on Tuesday, I'm fine with that, Ty. I'm fine with Derrick Rose and Emmanuel quickly running 1 and 2 together. I'm fine with that.
I was actually going to ask you about that. Is that, we have these 5 guards. Well, not we. I will never associate myself with the New York Knicks. However, you got these 5 guards on the roster. Who are you ending the game with in the backcourt? Is it going to be Quickly and Rose? Because that's who I would think would is the most confident duo to end the game.
Yeah, that's probably what I would end up selecting.
Now Thibodeau obviously has different opinions, because Elfrid Payton seems to end the game all the time now with his sharpshooting ability.
It depends on the game. It's really depends on the game for Thibodeau, because there have been some times where it is Quickly at the end. I mean, look at Portland. I think it was Tuesday night in Miami. Quickly was on the last possession. It kind of depends, but what I would like to see is I kind of want the Knicks to go a little bit smaller, right? When before D Rose trade, I would have said Austin Rivers, but now I'm going to say Derrick Rose. I would have liked D Rose, quickly, RJ, Randall, and Robinson. I'd be fine with that. I'm not the biggest Alec Burks guy. He had 3 good games, but not too great since he's not been great since he's come back from injury.
I know. I haven't watched him much on New York, but I will admit I'm a big Alec Burks guy on the Cavs and the Jazz is what has his career.
Well, yeah, I mean the guy could score the ball, but I don't know. There's just something about him. And Reggie Bullock, like he's good. He's the only competent 3-point shooter.
Yeah, he's a cone. He sits in the wing. He doesn't.
Yeah, so my most ideal lineup is RJ Barrett running the 3, and I know that's probably asking a lot, especially for a guy who hasn't developed as quickly as one would hope. But to answer your question, with the 2 guards, I am fine with seeing Quickly and Rose on the floor at the same time.
Yeah, that's funny because I wasn't even thinking about RJ Barrett. I was only thinking about the point guards that you guys have running combo in the backcourt. I wasn't even thinking about RJ Barrett playing there. But yeah, I mean, he is 6'8". He doesn't have the most muscular frame at this point in his career, but obviously he's got a lot of time to improve. It's only his 2nd year.
Sure.
But yeah, no, he should. If that is the lineup where you run Quickly and Rose, yeah, I say you have to throw Barrett in the 3. You know, when you're ending a basketball game, what are you putting on the court? Lou Williams is a perfect example. He's never started a game in his life. That's not true. He started a few games, but for the 99% of his career, he's come off the bench. Guess what he does for the Clippers? He finishes the game. So my mentality is that you have to put your 5 best guys on the floor to end your games, and that's not really what, in my opinion, what Tom Thibodeau's been doing. Leaving guys like Reggie Bullock, Burks, and Elfrid Payton on the floor, at the end of these tight game situations.
Yeah, no, I understand, and really with Thibodeau, it's kind of been a game by game basis. It depends. Like if we look on Tuesday's loss, it was Quickly, Barrett, Burks, Bullock, and Randall at the end of the game, which was I understand, especially with the play call. You had to have Robinson in because with the play call, I don't know if anyone saw it, but it was a pick and roll, and then RJ drove to the basket and looked for a rebound. They had Julius Randle in that. That's a perfect opportunity for Mitchell Robinson to sit that screen and crash to the basket. Mm-hmm. So that was a little peculiar, and it just has depended. Sometimes at the end of the game, the laps are great, right? And then others, it's what you're saying. It's just the lineups maybe don't make too much sense.
Now, the problem with that is why is there inconsistencies in end of game lineups? That's what I'm confused about, because you're trying to get a flow. You're trying to grow this group and build chemistry. The end of game lineup has to be the same. I mean, you see it around teams all around the NBA, the Lakers, the Celtics. These guys run the same 5 unless somebody's in ridiculous foul trouble or fouled out. They run the same 5 at the end of games, and it's typically their best 5 options to get the ball in the basket.
Well, I'll tell you why the Knicks don't have that luxury, Tyler. It's because we don't have 5 great players that you just are definitely going to stick out there no matter what. I'm actually fine with how he's handled it on a game-by-game basis. I'm perfectly fine with that. It's Tyler, being a Knicks fan, this is how it works, okay? You don't have 5 guys. Before Derrick Rose, I would sit with my friends and be like, all right, who would you give the ball to at the end of the game if we needed to make a shot? Who would it be? Would it be RJ Barrett? I wouldn't give it to RJ Barrett. No. But then who else are you giving to? You're giving it to Randall? I mean, it's like you sit here and just...
Are you talking before the Rose trade?
I'm talking before the Rose trade.
Right now, I give it to Rose.
Me too. Okay. But just... We're talking 6 days ago.
There's really not many pure shot creators. Honestly,
so
I might trust Quickly.
I know. I would too. And that's why it just depends on a game-by-game basis. So honestly, I'm fine with the rotations being how they have been so far. But it does depend on the game-by-game. That's how I see it. That's how I enjoy it, honestly.
Well, Tibbs is going to have to figure out, what lineup really works for him in order to successfully finish these games, because they lost another 1-possession game to the Heat just a couple nights ago, and they probably should have came out with that win.
Yes, thank you, RJ Barrett.
So thank you, RJ Barrett. I don't want to harp on too much of the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference right now.
9th.
Ninth, actually. I gave him a little too much credit. I should stop doing that about the Knicks. But there's more New York sports that are in the news. Tom's Mets are obviously making some noise. Not particularly with a splash in the of a roster move, but almost a splash. Tom, why don't you talk to it?
Well, in the recent news, it's come up again. We had this in early January, and now it's coming back again. And it's Chris Bryant. And I was sitting last night. We were in the BV room, and when the Andrew Benintendi trade happened, and they said it's a 3-team deal: the Royals, the Red Sox, and the Mets. And Tyler, you are my witness. I was sitting there freaking out because of who was potentially in that deal. And that person would also be in this deal.
Dylan Betances.
No, that's J.D. Davis.
Oh.
J.D. Davis would 1,000% be in a deal that included Chris Bryant. And I was nervous that last night included and we would get some return. Thankfully not. Zach Scott and Sandy Austin actually did very well last night in that deal. But in a potential Chris Bryant deal, it just screams to me that J.D. Davis would be involved, probably another younger prospect, and it would require a lot, even though he had a down year in 2020. I don't want to do this deal. And, a lot of Met fans would disagree with me, and they would. And I'll tell you why I wouldn't do it, Tyler. J.D. Davis, he is a young guy. I'll be honest. There probably is a little bit of bias because he is one of my favorite players to watch. But there's a reason that he's one of my favorite players to watch. Mm-hmm. I think he's such a young, pure hitter. It's only his 3rd full season in the majors this year. And if you look at that 2019 entire season, there wasn't one moment. After that April 6th game where he hit 2 homers against Patrick Corbin, he was fantastic the rest of the season. There wasn't one step back. There were like a little slumps every once in a while, but those slumps last 4 days, and he'd be right back. The consistency was there. In 2020, it was a little bit of a step back, but again, I kind of blame COVID and getting into a groove and such, and I wasn't really too concerned about it. This guy, I understand defense is an issue with him, but his bat is there, and it always has been there, and it will be there for a very long time. That's why I don't know if trading for a third baseman in Chris Bryant, who again MVP just 4 years ago, 5 years ago. But trading for a guy in his contract year when you already have Francisco Lindor and Michael Conforto and Noah Syndergaard and Marcus Stroman in their contract years, I don't want to take another guy in their contract year. I know Uncle Stevie Cohen has enough money, has more money than God, but I don't want to take that risk because you have J.D. Davis and you have him for 5 more years, 3 more years, whatever the hell it is. It's a long time. Okay. I don't know if I would do this deal.
So I'm gonna be the numbers guy today. I'm gonna be Mr. Analytics.
Let's see it.
And I'm gonna bring up your favorite stat.
Let's do it.
OPS plus.
115
career for J.D. Davis so far. Just 3 years. Chris Bryant has 135.
Yeah, of course. And I would like
and might I add that Chris Bryant is an absolutely electric defensive,
sure. Fix our defensive third baseman problems. I'd also like to do that. I'd like me to ask you what the OPS plus was over the last 2 years for J.D. Davis, because his time in Houston was very different from his time in New York. And I'm not saying that Chris Bryant's a bad player by any means in the imagination. Again, he was an MVP 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 2016, whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that he's a bad player. Of course, any team would like him on his roster. If we could just pick him up and stick him on the Mets, sure, do it right now. Do it yesterday. But it would require us giving up an asset that we have for a long time that has already proven himself in Major League Baseball. And we'd be getting a guy in his contract year who we would have to pay next year when we already have 2 of our top 3 starting pitchers, probably one of our best outfielder, Michael Conforto, and our potentially franchise shortstop. I just don't think taking on Chris Bryant, again, you take on Chris Bryant, you could win the World Series this year. I understand that.
Isn't that the goal?
It always is the goal, but I think that, I don't know. For me, and again, bias could creep in a little bit, but I don't know if it's J.D. Davis is bad. I mean, it does stick out to me. I don't know. I just worry about the contract.
Francisco Lindor and Chris Bryant would actually not let a ball get past them.
I understand that, of course.
You would never see a dribbler inside left field.
I understand that. I do. And J.D. Davis, over his progression from 2019, he opening weekend, he had a game at third base, and he looked pretty solid. Then he, into the May and June months of 2019, he struggled. That's why they stuck him out in the outfield. But 2020, he was a competent third baseman. That's why they kept him there. That's why they put Dom Smith down left. that's why they put McNeil back in the outfield. Excuse me. That's the name I was trying to look for. He has been getting better over time. Of course, defense is not his strength. I understand that. I am admitting that openly. But his bat is there. And I am just nervous about a contract situation. I don't understand. It's not the old Mets. Okay, it's not the old Mets that we're not gonna have money to pay any of these guys. But I don't know if taking on this guy, giving up assets, including J.D. Davis, and I would assume it would require a Thomas Sapaki, or I would say Josh Wolf, but they already traded him. Other major league ready guys.
Two guys who I've never heard of.
Multiple guys who. Again, Sandy Alderson and Zach Scott, they're trying to replenish the farm system.
Mm-hmm.
And trading off the farm system for Chris Bryant for 1 year, I don't know if that is the risk I would take. If you asked me this 3 weeks ago, Tyler, and you wanted to do a J.D. Davis trade for Nolan Arenado, I would be. But we're not. That's not it.
Is Nolan Arenado that much better than Chris Bryant? Like that much?
They're very comparable.
I would say they're very similar players.
Very comparable,
I know.
Especially outside of Coors Field. But I just meant because of the contract situation. You have him locked up and whatnot. And I don't know. I think I would have been more likely, especially because Nolan Arenado actually had a down season in 2022.
He did, yeah.
But it wasn't as far as a dip as Mr. Bryant.
Did you know that J.D. Davis is arbitrary eligible next year?
Yeah, of course.
So are you going to have to pay him at all?
Probably about, I'm not the biggest numbers guy. I would assume it would be about, it's first year eligible, right? So about,
it would be his first year eligible.
$4 million. It's nothing. $5 million.
Okay. All right. That's why I'm not too well versed in salary arbitration or anything, or any off-season MLB talk, but Tom is an absolute guru when it comes to.
It's his first year, so it's
all
nothing.
that stuff in the winter meetings and all that jazz.
My favorite week of the year.
Yeah, but no, I'm a Chris Davis guy. I was a huge fan. Like baseball was actually super fun to watch for me during that 2016 season when the Cubs were just wreaking havoc on the league and returning to prominence. I fell in love with that Cubs team and Chris Bryant especially being my favorite player. So as a guy who wants to see the both New York baseball teams succeed, I would love to see both teams just try to stack as many high end high production and big name players like the Mets and the Yankees can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I want to touch on one more thing before we go to break. Now, we talked about New York sports as far as the Knicks and the Mets. Now, I just want to get your outlook on, who I just talked about exactly, the Yankees. What is their next move going to be
as far as competing in the offseason? Because I personally think, this team's going to need more bullpen.
I would also agree that it would be bullpen. I think they should bring back Brett Gardner. I think it's always about depth. I know, and Brett Gardner
makes me cringe.
He just never leaves.
Yeah,
it's a guy who just never leaves.
And it's so funny because Yankees fans
absolutely love Brett Gardner. I am not a Brett Gardner guy. I'll say it straight up. I'm not.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but yeah, I would. I think Trevor Rosenthal would be a great guy for the Yankees. I think he'd also be a great guy for the Mets. But I think he would be a good fit to close the offseason. I don't think they need too much. They took care of their rotation.
It's not the way I would have done it.
At all?
Mark Kluber's coming back from vengeance. I'm telling you.
I mean, what? We got Jameson Taillon, Corey Kluber, Luis Severino, and Domingo Germán as 4 of your 5 starting pitchers in 2021. And they combined for 1 inning last year.
All right.
I'm not defending a single thing that Domingo Germán has done in his past, but it was not injury related. The reason for him missing last season, if you're catching my drift. Severino, I am worried about. I never thought he was an ace, and now he's coming off Tommy John, and it's just not going to bode well for him, in my opinion. We lost Tanaka, who's my favorite Yankee pitcher I've ever seen. Andy Pettit for a while too. So Tanaka's been my favorite Yankee pitcher I've ever seen. We lost him, but we still have the golden boy himself, Garrett Cole.
Oh God! Not even the best pitcher in New York.
That's debatable for.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It is not debatable that he is. No, Jacob deGrom is. This is not even a conversation. I'm not even allowing this to spark as a conversation. It's not even close.
All right. Well, I cannot get into a serious argument with Tom about the Mets because you know where that will go. I will probably.
It's not even Mets. It's just facts.
Oh, it's just facts.
It's just facts.
We'll stop it there. We're gonna head to break. When we come back, we're talking something I'm pretty fired up about, and that's Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks. When we come back, it's Seipp and Smitty on WSBU 88.3 The Buzz. Stick with us. WSBU, it's your favorite hour of the week, Seipp and Smitty. We're back after a short break, and like I just said, we're diving into something that I'm pretty fired up about, and that is Russell Wilson's media tour. He's been going around saying, and he just recently won the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. So he was in Tampa Bay for the Super Bowl. You saw him up in the box watching the game with his, Danger Russ mask on, and he looked pretty upset at what he saw, kind of giving him a little PTSD from the season, from what Patrick Mahomes was going through in that game and what he's been going through for a few years in Seattle. Now, I have been someone who has been advocating all 7 rounds of the draft, just taking a lineman. You're going to hit on 2. I promise. I promise you're going to hit on 2. And they just can't. They take maybe 1 or 2 offensive linemen per draft, and they neither hit. Jermaine Ifedi, who they took in the first round in 2016, absolute worst offensive lineman I've ever seen in my life. I still don't know how he has a job in the NFL. But Russell Wilson has recently stated that he's tired of getting hit. He's been sacked 394 times over the past 5 seasons, maybe 4. It's a staggering number, I have to admit. However, that number does not tell the entire story. Russell Wilson is an improviser. He is always somebody who's looking to make the big play, and oftentimes that can put him in some trouble. He's had pockets multiple times throughout these last couple of years where he just sits there and waits for something, and there's something underneath, the tight end or the running back leaking, but he's still looking downfield at Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf trying to make a ridiculous grab over the 2 defensive backs. He's too obsessed with making the big play. And I love Russell Wilson. He's my favorite football player that's ever stepped on the field. He deserves so much respect for basically carrying this franchise on his back since the Super Bowl 49 loss to the Patriots. I'm sure that's stuck with him for so long that he feels that it's necessary to keep pushing this team forward through him. And now he just seems a little fed up with the situation. Now he is going on some sort of media tour, so this could all be smoke, and this whole situation could be blown out of proportion. But the Seahawks are not happy with the way that he's kind of bashing the protection he's been getting over the past few years. We did just trade for Dwayne Brown just before last season when we got Jadeveon Clowney, so that kind of went hand in hand. We signed him actually as a free agent, and it provided some help on his blind side, but he's still seeing a lot of pressure from the rest of the offensive line, and a lot of those guys like Dwayne Brown and Mike Capati are getting really old, so they're not able to keep up with these physical specimens on the defensive lines of teams like the Rams. And I hate to mention Aaron Donald because he gives us so much hell throughout playing with us or playing us twice a year, and like this year he plays us 3 times and he can't breathe, but he's still going through 3 offensive linemen to get to Russell Wilson. So definitely there needs to be a change in the trenches for the Seahawks. I don't know where that's going to come. They don't have too much money in the cap. We just gave Russell Wilson the most money of any quarterback ever right before Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson got their deals. So there isn't a lot of money to be allocated. We just traded 2 first-round picks for Jamal Adams. So that needs to be taken care of. We need to find a way to pay him because we're going to make him the highest paid safety in the NFL. You don't waste 2 first-round picks to do so.
Mistake.
And he says mistake. I'll touch on that in just a little bit. However, Russell Wilson, he sat in the pocket for so long on some of these, dropbacks where it just becomes a coverage sack at that point. The defensive backs are playing a great game, and he just sits there waiting for the big play, and it just never comes. And then the defensive line eventually, converges on him and ends up getting the sack. So I really don't know what to make of this Russell Wilson situation. I know he's not going to be traded before the start of the season. I will take that to the bank. There's no way that Seattle gets rid of this guy. He's done so much for the franchise. He's done so much for the city. And when they were going through those contract or talks, things were getting pretty to a stalemate. We were going through this conversation just 2 years ago before he signed the deal, and now we're going through it again. And I don't know what to make of it. There has to be something that needs to change because he's the quarter. He is the face of the Seattle Seahawks. If he's not involved in personnel decisions regarding the roster that protects him, then maybe this is justified.
And Ty, let me ask you, what do you think? You said obviously you don't think he's going to be traded. I don't either. I don't think that will ever happen. But what do you think happens? What do you think happens with the Seattle Seahawks offseason as a whole? I know it's a very broad question, but what do you think is the result of all this?
Okay, so Seattle obviously has holes to fill in many parts of the team. Many. We have to fix the coverage aspect of the secondary. I know you mentioned the mistake of trading for Jamal Adams, but he provides an element on our defense that Cam Chancellor kind of provided when he was a member of the Legion of Boom. So I am fond of the way that Jamal Adams performed, when he was playing in his first year in Seattle. So I will be totally fine with whatever money they give him. He's a guy that you pay that money to. He's a guy that brings other defensive players, to the organization and wanting to play with Jamal Adams, with Bobby Wagner, with Shaquille Griffin, and all the rest of the actual productive defensive players that we do have on the roster. but the offensive line has to be the number one priority. It has to. There's no way we can go into the season with the same group that we have up front. Russell Wilson will be sacked another 50 times again this season, and it's just not going to sit well with him. Maybe next year, this time we're having a much more serious conversation than we are right now.
Yeah. Now, you talk about the result of obviously the offensive line. You touched on the defense a little bit with Jamal Adams. Yeah, I want to ask you, with the outlook on this team, do you think that there is enough with the core that they have right now to rebuild, restock, and make another run? Like they looked at the beginning of the season, they looked so good. Do you think that they have the ability and the strong enough core to rebuild this offseason into April and May, and then come September, they'll be one of the top teams in the West?
Okay, so they do, and I'll tell you why. As long as we can keep Chris Carson on a manageable deal below, and I'm saying like much below $10 million, and if he commands more, you know what, Carlos Hyde, he was fine. Seattle always seems to draft a running back in the draft, so we'll find something there. But we have the offense, we have the weapons that are necessary to make a run. Tight end is something that maybe we could improve a little bit, but the main two targets are DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. So as long as Russell Wilson has those two on his offense, and as long as those two have Russell Wilson in the offense, you're going to score points. Mm-hmm. Now, you look at our offensive line. It's Dwayne Brown, who's I just want to look real quick. He's 35. You look at Mike Iupati. He's 33, and he's not a great pass blocker. Run blocking is his strong suit. And then you have three guys on the rest of the offensive line that are the main sack allowers, and that any casual NFL fan would not be able to name. So those guys are I'm not obviously not bashing them as people as NFL players, but we're going to need something better out of the right side of the offensive line. Once we added Carlos Dunlap, the defense actually took an entire 180. So we were on pace to allow the most yards through the air, or even defensively in general, in NFL history by a wide margin. It was us and the Falcons who were both going to set records this year as allowing the most yards in NFL history. So that was going to be something that I was super wary of heading into the playoffs. But the defense got better once we added Dunlap. We started getting some QB pressure. We started making plays in the backfield, and things just meshed better on defense. Shaq Griffin came back. He missed a ton of time with injury. So things got better on defense, but then Russell Wilson started throwing interceptions and making bad decisions, and ending up losing us games in the fourth quarter. So we're going to need something, to just mesh well on both sides of the football. I don't know if that's going to come from Pete Carroll, who gives the worst answers to the media after he loses games. It's actually embarrassing the things he says to the media after the games. He blames, the game, the way the game played out for the way, for his coaching misfortunes. Like
no Pete Carroll. So I'm chewing gum for him right now.
Oh yes, I'm sure it's juicy fruit. So I don't know if that's to come from Pete Carroll, but we did just add a new offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron. Picked him off the Sean McVay tree, and hopefully that can change some stuff for the offense, so that we can really play a full 17 game now schedule. Heading into the playoffs where the offense is clicking, because this year obviously it wasn't. We lost to Jared Goff with one thumb.
And that, Tyler, I just want to wrap up this short segment with a question that is more on an entire league quarterback basis, right? So we hear the frustrations from Russell Wilson out of Seattle. We've seen the frustrations out of Houston with Deshaun Watson, Carson Wentz in Philadelphia. We see a lot of these quarterbacks on the move. What is your thought on the overall quarterback market? Because it seems like no quarterback in the entire league has a safe job except the ones in Kansas City and Tampa Bay.
So it's funny that you say that. I saw a tweet earlier today that it said a list of quarterbacks that have not bashed their teammates, bashed their front office, requested a trade, or anything negative towards the organization. It's Brady, Mahomes, like you just said, Lamar, who probably should be mouthing off at his organization right now, so he should probably take him off the list. Baker, who won't say anything because he needs to keep his job. Yeah. And then a couple other guys, and the other criteria was have been traded. So Matt Stafford was off that list. Aaron Rodgers was off that list, and a few other guys as well. So it's a very small contingency of quarterbacks right now that don't want out of their situation. So it's a really weird kind of changing of the guard in the NFL where, players, especially quarterbacks who have the most responsibility and, the most, face, the biggest face in the organization, they're kind of dictating what's going on with their careers. And you know what? I kind of like it. These guys get paid $40 million a year. You should be able to make decisions with that kind of contract. And, a lot of these quarterbacks are really voicing their opinions. Now, you talk about Carson Wentz. I mean, I don't know if he's somebody that really should be dictating a lot of roster moves right now with the way he played last season. But a guy like Russell Wilson
wasn't his fault.
Absolutely, a guy like Russell Wilson, a guy like Deshaun Watson, absolutely should be voicing these concerns. And hopefully, they say this, and it's for the betterment of the organization, and they can move forward and they can improve and make another Super Bowl run because Russell Wilson is a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and all he wants to do is win. So as long as Seattle can find a way to just please him and protect him in relative aspect to what he's been getting as of late, we can be a successful football organization and make another run of the Super Bowl because I think this team's talented enough to do so.
Tyler, as a Dallas Cowboy fan, I've never been one to love Seattle, but I always have had tremendous respect.
You guys beat us in the wild card.
I know.
The worst game ever that I've watched as a Seattle fan. We were the offensive play calling in that game.
Should have beat the Rams next round.
I know. That
should have won that game.
Yep. But
listen, Ty, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to run through some college hoops. Of course, we always have our good Atlantic 10 talk, but I also want to touch on what I think are the two best conferences in college basketball, and it's not the Big 12. It's the Big 10 and the Big East. We'll be right back on Seipp and Smitty on WSBU 88.3, The Buzz.
.3 WSBU, it's your favorite hour of the week for our last segment of the show, and it's everybody's favorite because we get so passionate about it. It's college hoops, it's Seipp and Smitty, and we'll just dive right into it because this college basketball season, I'm having the most fun I've ever had watching college basketball in such a hectic year. And I know you wanted to talk about before the G League platform of these top high school prospects springboarding to the NBA, but college basketball, I'd argue this season's better than ever.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's sad, Tyler, because college hoops, what makes college hoops? The fans and the students at the game. So it is a little depressing that you see these great games and you can't get the incredible reactions. But the level of competition, the level of basketball that's been played, and again, I made a slight joke just because I prefer Big 10 and Big East basketball. The Big 12 has been fantastic this year. The SEC has been fantastic
Absolutely.
This year. A10 is very deep. I had to throw that in there. And it really seems like the only major conference that's a little struggling a little bit is the ACC. But besides that, you can look at any other conference and say, hey, they're doing great this year. They have great teams. They're a deep conference. And again, you could do that for a whole plethora of different conferences.
Yeah, so it's funny that you say like basically all of Middle America is just thriving with college basketball right now. You look at the Pac-12 and you look at the ACC. They're the two conferences in the Power Five that are struggling the most right now.
Yeah.
And the ACC actually struggled the most last season out of the Power Fives. So they're looking for an uphill climb here as the rest of these Power Fives get better.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about what you think and probably what I think. I'm a little torn between Big Ten and Big 12, but what you think is the best conference in college basketball this season, the Big Ten.
I do.
What's going on with your Hawkeyes?
Oh, why we have to open with that?
Had to.
We
I
have
just
to start-
had to.
Hey, listen.
I mean, the best team in the conference is on pause right now. I know you could argue Ohio State, but I'd say Michigan, the best team in the conference, is on pause right
The
now.
most
So we have to
talented
talk
team,
about the Hawkeyes.
the most talented team won in Iowa last night against Rutgers. The Hawkeyes are, I think, without question, not without question because Illinois isn't still in the conference, but I think Iowa is one of the most talented teams in the country. If we're just going off purely talent, I think they're third in the country. But they have struggled late in games. Their big issue, for some odd reason, has been how they finished. They've had some really ugly finishes, and it's costed them a few games, including Illinois. In Indiana.
Illinois included as well, though.
Well, that is true, actually. Illinois, that was a great game, though. I mean, Illinois is a fantastic team. And in Illinois, I knew it was going to be a great finish, and that's exactly what it was. But I was really more pointing towards both Indiana games. They had leads in them, and then they fell. Even the Michigan State game, like Michigan State is having a down year, and they were up by 10 with about 2 minutes left, and then they make it close to the end. Yeah. The way, and I'm a huge Fran McCaffrey fan. I always have been, even though he's been such a jerk to the media this year. And as a media member, I never like to see that. But for some odd reason, he's really struggled with this group at the end of games. And I know CJ Frederick was out for a while, and he came back last night. He helped with a little bit of a spacing on the hand score, but he did provide some help. But this team is so incredibly deep, Tyler. If you look at their top 3 bench pieces, they would be the Atlantic 10 Player of the Year. They would, and it's true. Nunji, Patrick, McCaffrey, Keegan Murray, they'd be the best players in this damn conference.
I'm a Keegan Murray super fan. I think he's the best. I'd say, you know what? I think he's the best bench guy in college basketball right now. That is a super hot take.
That's high praise, but I actually agree with you. I actually agree with you.
Keegan Murray is legit. Offensively, he can knock down the 3. And I think he's a phenomenal defender.
Yeah, and he's definitely look. I think he's only a freshman, Ty. He's only a freshman. So that's very exciting for my Hawkeyes. But just talking about them as a group, Luka Garza is by far Player of the Year, without question again. Yep. He should have been last year, but I digress. He's been great this year. Joey Wieskamp he's been a guy that I have always been a humongous fan of. And last night he really stepped up against the team from New Jersey and shot the ball incredibly well to get Iowa that big win, because you know what, Tyler? I actually have something to pick with you.
Okay, what do you got?
You ruined my week last week, actually. Whoa. And it was on this very show.
Oh, okay.
You and I, we were talking about the Iowa Hawkeyes last week.
Oh, I see.
And you said that Iowa, they have no good wins. They have no good wins. And Tyler, I swear to God, every damn night since, my dad is like, oh, see? Iowa, they have no wins. Your friend, Tyler Smith, he said it. They have no good wins. And I'm just like, Dad, I understand, but they have had some good wins. Even Minnesota, they have had a few good wins. Rutgers twice.
Was Minnesota even on the road? No, it was at home.
It was at home. They actually lost in Minnesota. But my point is, I did just want to thank you for that. For now, every night I hear that Iowa, they have no good wins. I feel like I'm going to bed. And he'll just randomly text me. First time I hear from him all day. Hey, Tom, hope all is well. Oh, by the way, Iowa has no good wins. That's kind of how it's turned into. And they don't.
I don't, you know what? I don't have a crystal ball or anything, but they haven't had any good wins besides this Rutgers game since I made that claim. Now, I want to be able to, delve into the rest of the teams in the Big Ten. And that's kind of what we can do here with the Iowa Hawkeyes, because their schedule starting Saturday becomes a gauntlet.
Brutal.
It is really
starting last night.
Yeah, actually starting last night, because they played a ranked Rutgers team that I think Ron Harper Jr. and company is a great group who, maybe make a little run in the tournament.
If Geo Baker can actually step up, he's gotten worse all 4 of his years in red and the Skyline.
The Scarlet Knight. So yeah, this Iowa schedule becomes, in my opinion, and I haven't looked at the rest of the schedules of all the teams in college basketball, but I would be hard pressed to find a remaining schedule as hard as this one.
Mm-hmm.
You get Wisconsin twice, once after this game against at Michigan State, so that's going to be a tough game in its own. They're vying for a tournament spot. You got Wisconsin, and then you bookend it with the end of the season with Wisconsin. And in between those, you got Penn State, who's on the bubble.
Mm-hmm.
You have Ohio State, who's a top 4 team in the country,
Mm-hmm.
and you have Michigan, who's a top 3 team in the country. So, where is Iowa going to find these wins? I can't see them going better than what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can't see them going better than 4 and 2.
My dad told me they were going to go on 6. So
Whoa,
thank
they're
you
not
for
gonna go
that.
over 6. They're going to beat. And I say they're going to beat one of Ohio State or Michigan.
Listen, I think if they finish 4 and 2, that continues to hold them on that maybe 3 line, and they'll be fine. And once they come to a Big Ten tournament, they're deep enough that they'll be able to make a run in the Big Ten tournament. I do firmly believe that if they're able to finish off the damn game. But yeah, I really think that this team's gonna be fine. I understand that in years past, it feels like an Iowa Hawkeye tradition of collapsing at the end of every season when it comes to the home stretch in February, then into the conference tournament and NCAA tournament. But I think this team's going to be fine. They do have to get one of those wins against Wisconsin. If you could steal, if they win the Michigan game, then they're absolutely fine. Then they're going to be locked in to a 3 line or above, and they're going to be okay. Honestly, if they get an Ohio State win, so they could split with them too.
And the Ohio State win would be on the road. So the good part about Iowa here, and it could be a bad part depending on the results of these games, is. But as far as resume building, 3 of these the 4 biggest games are on the road. I mean, obviously you have one of the Wisconsin games is at home, but you're going to East Lansing,
Mm-hmm.
which is a tough place to play. Obviously, Izzo and company make it really hard to play in Spartan country. And so you go at Wisconsin, go back home to Penn State, but then both Ohio State and Michigan are on the road. So those are great opportunities for Iowa to build their resume. So if they can get, if they can knock a couple of those teams out and then make a run of the Big Ten, I see a 2 seed.
I see it too, and even they can crawl back into the 1 because Gonzaga and Baylor are going to be on that 1.
Gonzaga and Baylor are locks for now.
And it's going to be whoever wins Big Ten.
Yeah, okay.
And it could be 2 Big Ten schools as the other one-liner. Who else would it be?
Yeah, I mean, you could think about, potentially.
I don't even know.
I'm trying to think. I mean, a team like
Villanova. I don't know.
Maybe.
But I predict them collapsing in the Big East tournament, which we're going to get to in a second.
Alabama had a bad loss.
No, it's going to be 2 Big Ten schools. Big Ten schools. It's the best conference in the country.
Yeah, because Illinois is right going to be there too. Houston won't get a 1 seed, so yeah, it'll be 2 Big Ten schools.
And if it's not, it's Villanova, which leads us into the Big East real quick.
Yep.
And I have always been a sucker for some Big East basketball. I love the Catholic League. But one team, Tyler, and it's not because I like them. A lot of people make fun of me because of how many college basketball teams I like. I only like 3. I like Iowa.
Only.
I like Iowa. First of all, I like St. Bonaventure because I
like
love St. Bonaventure because I attend this university. I've liked Iowa for a very long time as the hottest team in the country. Before Tuesday, and then when they lost to Butler, St. John's Red Star.
Oh, St. John's Red Star.
Mike Anderson has done such a great job. Julian Champagnie might be the Big East Player of the Year. David Duke has had a really tough 4-game stretch for Providence. They might eliminate him from the running, and Julian Champagnie is 20-point per game scorer. He's the leading scorer in the Big East. I would really think that at this point, the only other competition is Connor Gillespie because James Bouknight is still out with an injury. So. This team is getting hot at the right time,
Mm-hmm.
and I just give so much credit to Mike Anderson. And in this system that he runs, the players that he has is benefiting so much. And St. John's, listen, they are on the bubble. They're the first 4 out according to Joe Lunardi, and they quite possibly have the Player of the Year in Julian Champagnie, and without question, unanimously, the Freshman of the Year, which is Posh Alexander.
I actually love Posh Alexander for the Red Storm. Now, they are a team that's on the bubble. They got a really good win just a couple weeks ago. Not a couple weeks ago, but just a couple of days ago over Providence, and that was one of a win that they absolutely needed to stay in contention in the tournament.
Yes.
The Butler loss, obviously, is something that
it's a little tough, but it's on the road.
The committee won't love it. but I don't think it's a deal breaker.
No, I don't either.
I think St. John's is a team that they don't make the tournament every year. When they do, it's usually on like an 8 or 9 line. This year, I would be hard pressed to see them getting above an 11.
Yeah, no, if they get in, they'll be a first 4. And what's gonna I hate to cut you off, I apologize, but I think what's going to benefit them is they are a pretty deep team, right? It's kind of in a way the opposite of St. Bonaventure. Oh. If they get into a Big East tournament, I think they could steal 2-3 wins. It depends on where they're seated. It might only be 2 that they'll have a chance, but they could steal a few wins. They can make a run in the tournament. It's like Providence has always had in years past. How Providence always has these deep teams, and Ed Cooley in the tournament, you never count them out. That's kind of how I envision this St. John's team approaching the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden.
Mm-hmm. And the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden is something that I always marvel at and love to go down to see a couple double headers during that great conference tournament.
Who doesn't love to see that? And unfortunately, last year would have been the Big East tournament in Manhattan and the Atlantic 10 tournament in Brooklyn.
But would have been a both. I tell you that right now, it would have been a both.
Oh yeah, of course, me too. But now we're moving to Virginia.
Yeah.
And then we can wrap up here real quick. Just touch on a little bit of the Atlantic 10. If you don't, we have about 2 minutes.
How could we not touch on the Atlantic 10?
I know. We always have to talk about Atlantic 10 hoops. Joe Lenardi only has 2 teams in. I think we're a 4-bid league. I think I know. I always say that. I think this league's good.
I love nothing more than the A10 getting 4 teams in a year with no Ivy League, with a year with all the blue bloods are out of the tournament. Kentucky, Duke, so Kentucky, Duke, UNC, all 3 are not going to make the tournament. So that leaves 3 spots that normally wouldn't be open. So you get a mid-major conference that's having a really great year like the A10, where you can get if St. Bonaventure doesn't collapse, if St. Louis keeps churning ahead, they're obviously a very talented team, the Travis Ford and company, and those the other 2 in VCU and Richmond making noise as well. So it could be a 4-bid league. All 4 of those teams need to be the Final 4 in the A10 tournament for that to happen.
Yeah.
And they need to string together some wins here, but they all play each other. So there's going to be some losses that might knock 1 or 2 of these teams out of contention. Personally, I think we're a 2-bid league.
So Tyler, we have about 30 seconds left, and it's just give me a quick answer.
Okay.
Tomorrow night, Friday night showcase, St. Bonaventure at Virginia Commonwealth University. Who you got? It has to be quick.
It's going to be close, but I'm taking Bonnies. We said it in the newspaper today. I'm not going to go back on myself. I got to go Bonnies by 2 possessions max.
Let's just say it's going to be a very, very, very close game.
And it's going to be on ESPN too. We're on national television. It's time for the Bonnies to make their mark on national TV. And they better this time because they've let us down so many times in the ESPN networks. This has got to be the one we need. So with that said, this concludes another episode of Seipp and Smitty. But before we go,
on streaming services,
we are airing an exclusive interview, something we've never really done before. It's something I've never really done before personally, is an exclusive interview with Ethiopian boxing trainer and former national team member Seipp Zewdie and the director for his documentary, Suffer for Good, Danny Simmons, the director. It was a great conversation we had last week, and we're finally getting to air the interview today. I really, hope you guys enjoy this because it's something that, it was very different for me. Seipp has a great story, and he'll really, he's going to tell you about it. So,
and again, if you're listening on the air, that's going to be on YouTube Live, Twitter Live, and Facebook Live.
So yeah, please tune into this interview. It's something I was, I wasn't super excited for at the beginning of Remote Radio Row, but it was, as we got closer to the interview, I was super excited to do it. And when we did the interview, it was a blast. So I really hope you guys enjoy it. When we come back, we'll be airing that interview. So stick with us on Seipp and Smitty for an exclusive interview with Danny and Seipp.
in the middle of the filming, you know what? Let me do one fight. It would be great for the movie. Let's go back to my office again one more time. And it's children, also for my students, for my fighters. Let's what kind of do, and that better to see gives them more motivation. Gives them more to achieve their.
Walk us through what brought you to Suffer for Good, and I'm actually going to ask Danny the same question right after you.
Yeah, the Suffer for Good is the word that comes from my coach. Okay, I had a great coach. He's from Moscow. He came from Soviet Union to train for the Ethiopian Olympic team. And I just go through it and you'll achieve. That was you trying to mean to. So I do come up with that word, and I keep telling for my students and my clients, for my fighters, and I told them to suffer. And it would be until they see the movie. It's kind of really, and I ask, people ask. And that time we have to able to pass that difficult time. It was really a big challenge. I tried. That's how the word helps me to achieve my goals, and at the same time, you might have in the future. So you might have difficult.
Seipp Zewdie and director of his documentary Suffer for Good, Danny Simmons. Guys, we had a couple technical difficulties to start, but we're all here now, and I couldn't be more excited to have you on.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Tyler, I really appreciate it. Thanks for being so kind. And obviously, it's always good chatting it up about the football season. We obviously have a great game, so that was fun as well. So thank you.
Absolutely. I will actually get to that towards the end of